When God speaks about a person who's meant to walk with you in life, his voice doesn't arrive in noise. It comes through clarity. People often expect divine guidance to sound like thunder, some overwhelming emotional rush, or a sign so spectacular that it removes all doubt. But in reality, God's voice doesn't compete with chaos. It's the still, steady undercurrent beneath it. It's the quiet conviction that persists even when your emotions fluctuate. It's not built on intensity. It's built on truth. You begin to sense that something deeper is at play, that this connection isn't just chemistry. It's calling. There's a vast difference between confusion and conviction. Confusion thrives in fantasy. It pulls you toward the idea of a person, not the reality of them. It's that whirlwind of infatuation that feels powerful but leaves you anxious and uncertain. Conviction, on the other hand, is peaceful even when it's difficult. It doesn't create emotional chaos. It brings order to it. It's the moment you realize, I don't have to force this. The clarity of God doesn't erase every question, but it quiets the need to control. It allows trust to replace obsession. See, the human heart is easily deceived when it's desperate. When we want something deeply enough, we can convince ourselves that God is speaking even when he's silent. That's why discernment isn't about feeling, it's about formation. You learn to recognize God's voice, not by chasing signs, but by aligning your life with his truth. When your values, your actions, and your emotional life are in order, his guidance becomes clearer. You can't hear divine instruction through emotional noise. So before you can recognize the one God is pointing you toward, you must silence the impulses that demand immediate gratification. God's clarity doesn't feed your fantasy. It confronts it, showing you the difference between desire and destiny. And that realization might sting. Sometimes you'll have to let go of someone who feels right emotionally, but isn't right spiritually. The pain of that loss is part of purification. It's how your heart learns to want what's healthy, not just what's familiar. Because when your soul matures, your definition of love changes. You begin to understand that God's version of love isn't meant to intoxicate you. It's meant to transform you. This kind of clarity doesn't happen overnight. It develops through inner stillness, through prayer, through the willingness to stop chasing every emotional impulse and start listening. The more grounded you become in truth, the more you can sense when something carries God's presence. It feels like peace, not pressure. It brings a kind of quiet certainty that doesn't demand constant reassurance. That's how you know the difference between divine confirmation and emotional confusion. One leads you to peace, the other leads you to dependency. So when you ask, is this the person God has for me? The answer won't come in a dramatic sign. It will come in alignment. It will come through the absence of anxiety and the presence of purpose. You'll start to see how their life complements yours, how their presence calls you to become more disciplined, more grounded, more authentic. That's God's way of confirming, not through spectacle, but through substance. If you're in a place of uncertainty, don't rush to label what's unclear. Sit with it. Let time do what emotion can't. Truth reveals itself slowly, and when it does, it won't leave you doubting. You'll know it's God because peace will follow, not confusion. The voice of God is never manipulative. It doesn't lure you through fear or anxiety. It invites you through wisdom and responsibility. When he speaks about someone, it won't pull you away from yourself. It will pull you deeper into who you're meant to be. His voice won't feed your insecurity. It will challenge it. It will refine how you love, how you see, and how you choose. And when that conviction comes, when you finally feel that quiet certainty that this connection isn't just emotion, but intention, hold on to it carefully. Don't rush it. Don't idolize it. And don't let fear distort it. Trust that God doesn't confuse the hearts he's trying to unite. Because when God speaks, he doesn't whisper chaos. He whispers peace. And peace never lies. When God reveals something about the person you're meant to marry, it's rarely through ease. It's often through exposure. He doesn't simply hand you a perfect partner. He prepares you through contrast. Before you meet the one who's right, you'll likely encounter what's wrong. Not because God is cruel, but because he's teaching you discernment. You learn the value of truth by confronting deception. You learn the weight of commitment by enduring disappointment. You learn what love actually is by facing what it's not. Every failed connection leaves behind a lesson if you're willing to extract it. Most people don't realize that the pain of past relationships isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's the soul's way of refining its understanding of love. The heartbreak you went through wasn't meaningless. It was a mirror. It showed you the parts of yourself that still needed growth. The tendencies that led you to tolerate confusion or chase validation. When God allows someone to leave, he's not taking something good from you. He's making room for something true. From a psychological standpoint, this is deeply profound. The human brain builds associations through repetition. When you repeatedly attach to relationships that bring chaos or inconsistency, your mind begins to equate that instability with passion. It's a trap, a neurological confusion that makes dysfunction feel like love. God's preparation breaks that pattern. He interrupts the cycle by allowing disillusionment, by letting the illusions collapse so you can finally separate intensity from intimacy. That collapse, though painful, is an act of mercy. Philosophically, this process represents the movement from illusion to truth. It's the same movement you see in the story of transformation itself, the breaking of the old identity so that the new can emerge. When you lose what you thought you wanted, you're forced to examine what you truly value. You stop asking, who do I want? And start asking, who am I becoming? That's the question God cares about far more, because the one you'll marry isn't just someone you desire. It's someone who aligns with your destiny. And destiny requires development. This is why divine timing is often inconvenient. It stretches you. It exposes your impatience. It shows you that the person you are today might not yet be capable of sustaining the relationship you're praying for. God doesn't delay love. He matures it. And in that process, he reveals who can truly meet you at the level of your calling. Many people want partnership without transformation. They want a divine connection but refuse divine discipline. But love that lasts, love that mirrors the sacred, can only exist where character has been forged. When you begin to see this, your perspective changes. You stop resenting the waiting season because you understand it's shaping your vision. You stop idolizing potential in people who aren't ready because you know readiness isn't romantic. It's responsible. You stop mistaking chemistry for compatibility. Chemistry can be immediate. Compatibility takes time to reveal itself. The one God has for you won't just feel right, they'll fit right. Not because they complete, but because they complement the wholeness you've already cultivated. And that's the shift when you're finally ready. Love stops feeling like rescue and starts feeling like reinforcement. The right person doesn't save you from loneliness. They join you in purpose. You'll know you're prepared for them when you no longer need them to fill a void, but instead recognize that your union multiplies meaning. That's divine alignment. Not two people clinging out of fear, but two souls walking with direction. So if God has been silent, if he's been removing people or keeping you in solitude, it's not neglect, it's refinement. He's aligning your heart with your higher nature. He's ensuring that when love does arrive, you'll have the clarity to recognize it and the strength to sustain it. Because the truth is, God doesn't just want you to find the right person. He wants you to be the right person when they arrive. And when that alignment happens, it won't feel forced. It won't need convincing. It will feel like peace after a long storm, not because it's perfect, but because it's right. When God begins to reveal the one you'll marry, the recognition often starts within you. Not with fireworks, not with some cinematic moment, but with a quiet, stabilizing clarity. There's something deeply psychological and spiritual about that. See, love, when it's truly aligned with divine purpose, isn't about losing your mind in passion. It's about finding your center in peace. And that's the paradox most people miss. They expect divine love to arrive in chaos, the rush, the chase, the intensity. But God's order never disguises itself as confusion. The one meant for you won't throw you into turmoil. They'll call you into calm. From a psychological perspective, that sense of peace is your nervous system recognizing safety. Real connection doesn't trigger your defenses, it disarms them. When you meet someone aligned with your purpose, your mind stops scanning for danger. You don't find yourself questioning their intentions every other day. You're not caught in cycles of anxiety trying to decode their behavior or justify your pain. Instead, there's a stillness, the kind that comes when two people meet at the same emotional and spiritual altitude. That peace isn't boredom, it's maturity. It's the mind realizing it's finally in an environment where love can grow instead of merely survive. Spiritually speaking, this peace is what Scripture refers to as discernment. God isn't always loud about what's right. He's consistent. He doesn't send you confusion and call it chemistry. He gives you alignment and calls it confirmation. Many people misinterpret comfort as lack of passion, but what they're actually feeling is unfamiliar stability. After chaos, calm can feel almost foreign. That's why God often has to heal your internal state before He introduces the person meant for you. Because if your soul is still addicted to emotional volatility, you'll mistake peace for disinterest and pass up something real for something dramatic. Theologically, this ties into the concept of divine timing. When two people are both healed enough, grounded enough, and spiritually aware enough, God brings them into contact, not merely as romantic partners, but as collaborators in purpose. This is not about the superficial idea of soulmates as perfect mirrors. It's about complementary design. The person God intends for you will not be perfect. They'll be prepared. They'll have walked their own path of growth, endured their own trials, and developed the capacity to love in truth rather than in need. From a philosophical lens, you could say that this kind of love is the meeting point between chaos and order. You've gone through the storm. They've gone through theirs. Together, you build a structure, something that transcends the emotional highs and lows of infatuation. You build meaning. And meaning, as Peterson often reminds us, is what sustains the human spirit. Passion fades, attraction changes, but meaning, shared values, shared growth, shared service to something higher, that's what endures. This is why God doesn't rush the process. He's not withholding. He's weaving. He's synchronizing two lives that had to be broken in very specific ways so they could fit together in strength. That's why when the right one arrives, you'll notice how strangely effortless it feels. Not because there's no work involved, but because the work feels worthwhile. There's mutual effort, mutual respect, mutual understanding. You both sense that what you found isn't fragile, it's sacred. And that's what people need to remember. Divine love doesn't demand that you lose yourself. It calls you to become your highest self. It doesn't shrink you to fit another person's insecurities. It expands you to fulfill a shared destiny. The one God reveals won't drain your energy. They'll amplify your purpose. So when peace arrives, don't dismiss it. Don't overlook the quiet person who brings you clarity just because the world taught you to crave chaos. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes the most divine connections enter your life gently, not to disrupt your world, but to help you build a new one. And that's how you'll know. When love stops feeling like escape and starts feeling like home, that's not coincidence. That's God whispering, this one is safe. This one is yours. When God begins preparing two people for union, the process rarely feels romantic, at least not at first. It feels more like refinement. It feels like being stretched, like being emptied of everything superficial, everything impatient, everything wounded that would sabotage something sacred. And that's the part most people don't understand. We think God's preparation for love should feel like comfort. But often it feels like confrontation, a confrontation with ourselves. Before the right one comes, God makes sure you can handle the weight of love without collapsing under it. Psychologically, this is crucial. Relationships don't fail because people don't love each other enough. They fail because people aren't whole enough to sustain the love they claim to want. Two broken individuals can have the best intentions in the world, but intention doesn't repair immaturity. It takes character. It takes responsibility. It takes someone who's faced their own shadow and refused to project it onto someone else. So God uses isolation, heartbreak, disappointment, not to punish you, but to reveal you to yourself. You learn what triggers you, what patterns you repeat, what kind of people you attract, and most importantly, why. Every moment of heartbreak becomes a mirror showing you where you need healing. From a philosophical point of view, this refinement mirrors the ancient idea of becoming before belonging. You can't truly belong to another until you've become someone who belongs to themselves. Not in the narcissistic sense of self-obsession, but in the disciplined sense of self-knowledge. If you don't know who you are, you'll unconsciously demand that another person define you. And that's not love. That's dependency disguised as connection. God's preparation teaches you to be grounded enough to give love freely, rather than using it to fill an inner void. Spiritually, that's what divine timing protects. You might feel like God is delaying your union, but in reality, He's protecting it. He's ensuring that when the two of you come together, you won't destroy what you prayed for. Because love without maturity is like fire in the hands of a child. Powerful, but dangerous. When you've developed discipline, humility, and emotional honesty, love becomes an act of stewardship rather than possession. You stop asking, what can this person give me? And start asking, how can I care for what's been entrusted to me? That's the difference between ego-driven love and divine partnership. There's also a psychological reordering that happens in this phase. Your standards shift. You begin to see that chemistry isn't compatibility and that desire isn't always direction. You start discerning between who stimulates you and who stabilizes you. And once you've experienced enough chaos, stability becomes profoundly attractive. That's when you know you've grown. When peace no longer feels boring and love no longer feels like a rescue mission. God has calibrated your discernment. You no longer chase intensity. You crave authenticity. And that's precisely when the right one begins to enter your orbit, because spiritually your energy changes. You stop exuding desperation and instead you radiate readiness. That subtle internal shift draws in someone who's been through their own process of preparation. They've been refined too by pain, by time, by truth. And when you meet, it feels like recognition, not infatuation. You both understand that love isn't just a feeling, it's a covenant. It's a shared commitment to growth, to faith, to meaning. What's remarkable about God's orchestration is that it's never random. Every heartbreak, every delay, every unanswered prayer, it's all shaping you into the person who can receive what's been promised. You might not see it while you're in the middle of it, but one day you'll look back and realize if God given you what you wanted when you wanted it, you would have lost it. But now you're ready, so don't resist the refinement. Don't resent the waiting. God isn't keeping you from love. He's making sure love won't be wasted on an unready heart. The pain you're enduring isn't the absence of His promise. It's the preparation for His fulfillment. When the right one comes, you'll understand why you had to wait. You'll see that the fire didn't destroy you. It purified you. And in that moment, you'll realize something simple, profound, and freeing. The preparation was love too. When God brings the right person into your life, it won't be through confusion or chaos. It will come with a quiet sense of certainty. That doesn't mean it will be perfect or that you'll be free from all challenges, but it will feel aligned. There will be peace underneath the uncertainty, because the kind of relationship that's divinely orchestrated doesn't rely on manipulation or constant reassurance. It's rooted in mutual clarity. You'll know not because you're infatuated, but because your soul feels settled. And that sense of peace is something you can't fabricate or fake. It's what emerges when two people have both done the work to become ready for what they're being given. Psychologically, what's happening here is a shift from emotional impulse to grounded discernment. When you've been through enough experiences that exposed your patterns, your attractions, and your emotional blind spots, you begin to develop something far more valuable than passion. You develop awareness. Awareness allows you to see the difference between someone who triggers your wounds and someone who speaks to your growth. That's not something you can learn from a book. It's something life teaches you, often the hard way. And that's exactly why divine timing matters so much. God waits for you to see clearly before he brings clarity into your life. Because when you finally stop mistaking intensity for love, you create the space for something authentic to enter. Philosophically, this is what maturity looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of order. Emotion without order leads to chaos. Emotion guided by truth leads to wisdom. That's why divine relationships don't feel frantic. They feel structured, intentional, directed. You and the other person will find yourselves aligned not only in attraction, but in purpose. And purpose is what makes love sustainable. Because if love isn't grounded in something higher, something beyond personal satisfaction, it eventually collapses under the weight of its own expectations. When the right one arrives, they'll meet you in a place of responsibility, not rescue. You'll recognize each other not as two halves trying to complete something broken, but as two whole individuals coming together to build something greater. This distinction is crucial. Codependent relationships say you complete me. Mature relationships say we complement each other. And that's the kind of love God ordains. One that strengthens both individuals instead of consuming them. But there's also a spiritual recognition that takes place. A kind of inner confirmation that bypasses logic. It's not a fleeting emotion, it's a resonance. It's when your spirit recognizes another spirit that's been walking the same path, enduring similar refinement, learning similar lessons. You can't explain it easily, but it's unmistakable. It's what happens when divine timing aligns two people who have both surrendered their own plans for a higher plan. That's when God's orchestration becomes visible, when everything that once didn't make sense suddenly does. Still, that kind of connection requires courage, because divine partnerships don't just bring comfort, they demand growth. They'll challenge you to live up to your potential, not retreat from it. They'll call you to accountability, not complacency. And that's the paradox of love that's truly from God. It both soothes and stretches you. It brings peace, but it also invites transformation. You can't hide in divine love. You have to evolve within it. And this is where many people stumble. They pray for divine love, but they're not prepared for what it asks of them. They want the beauty without the responsibility. They want the feeling without the discipline. But if you look at love as something sacred, something that mirrors God's nature, then it makes sense that it demands truth, effort, and integrity. Divine love isn't given to make you comfortable. It's given to make you complete. So when the right person shows up and you feel that strange mix of peace and purpose, don't run from it. Don't let fear or past disappointment make you question what you've prayed for. Instead, lean into it. Allow yourself to trust what God has aligned. Because when something is meant for you, it won't require you to betray your peace to keep it. It will invite you to become more of who you were always meant to be. The truth is, the right one won't just love you. They'll understand you. They'll see you not just for who you are, but for who you're becoming. And that's how you'll know it's not just a connection, it's a calling. When love is from God, you won't have to chase it. You'll have to rise to it. When God reveals the one, the person you're meant to build a life with, it won't just be about emotion or timing or attraction. It will be about alignment. Divine alignment means that your paths, your values, your vision, and your readiness all intersect at a point that feels almost divinely orchestrated. It's not coincidence. its culmination. Everything that once felt delayed or denied begins to make sense because you see how each experience, each heartbreak, each moment of isolation was shaping you for this connection. You start to realize that God wasn't withholding love. He was preparing you to sustain it. What's interesting, psychologically speaking, is how this readiness emerges not through fantasy, but through transformation. You're no longer looking for someone to fix your loneliness or validate your worth. You're looking for someone to share purpose with. That's a fundamental shift in consciousness. It's the difference between a person who needs love to feel whole and a person who gives love because they are whole. The human psyche is wired to seek attachment, but spiritual maturity reframes that instinct. Instead of seeking completion through another, you begin to express the wholeness that already exists within you. That's when love becomes real. It moves from dependency to destiny. Philosophically, this touches on one of the most profound principles of divine order, reciprocity. The right person doesn't come to take from you. They come to mirror what's already been cultivated within you. If you've developed integrity, they'll reflect that. If you've learned patience, they'll honor that. If you've learned to set boundaries, they won't cross them. They'll respect them. Love in its divine form becomes an exchange between two people who are each rooted in truth. That's what makes it stable. It's not built on illusion, but on mutual recognition. You see them not as an escape, but as an equal, a partner in the divine unfolding of your life story. And when that connection finally arrives, there's often an uncanny sense of familiarity. It's as though your soul remembers something your mind can't fully explain. That's not mystical in some vague romantic sense. It's deeply psychological and spiritual because two people who have both been through their own refining fire recognize the language of growth in each other. They can read the scars without judgment. They can sense the strength behind the silence. And that recognition breeds a form of intimacy that transcends words. But here's the paradox. Divine love doesn't eliminate your individuality. It magnifies it. The right person won't ask you to shrink. They'll challenge you to expand. They won't compete with your calling. They'll complement it. That's why God's timing is so precise. He doesn't unite people based merely on desire. He unites them based on destiny. You can't step into a divine relationship if you're still living beneath your potential. You must first grow into the version of yourself that can sustain what you've been asking for. Because love isn't just an emotion, it's a responsibility, and responsibility demands strength, discipline, and vision. Spiritually, this is the culmination of obedience and trust. You've learned to surrender control. You've stopped chasing and started aligning. You've shifted from asking, when will it happen, to declaring, I'll be ready when it does. That's faith in motion. And that faith, that quiet, unwavering trust is what opens the door for divine alignment to take form. Because faith doesn't just wait. It prepares, it builds, it transforms, waiting into readiness. And so when that person finally steps into your life, you'll know, not because it's easy, but because it's true. You'll sense that everything has come full circle. You'll feel God's fingerprints on the timing, the connection, the peace, and maybe for the first time, you'll stop striving to make something work and start recognizing what already is working because it's meant to. The truth is, divine love isn't a prize for the patient. It's a result of alignment. It's when your growth meets God's timing. And when those two things converge, the relationship that unfolds won't just be about happiness. It will be about purpose. So don't rush it. Don't manipulate it. Don't chase what isn't ready. Instead, keep becoming who you're meant to be. Because when you do, the one meant for you will find you in that alignment. And the moment they do, you'll understand why it never worked with anyone else. The one God has for you won't pull you out of your purpose.